Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a custom campaign in real time. I'm your host, RJ Kerr, and today we are going to be continuing along building the side quest that we came up with a few sessions ago of this monster hunt. Um, Before we do that, though, let's go ahead and do a quick recap of what we've done so far. So if you're new to the stream or you're not caught up, you aren't lost. So we have been building a custom campaign, as I said, and this one includes its own fully unique domain of dread. To give ourselves a little bit of structure on that and some idea of where to start and what we might want to include, we're using a story circle structure to help guide the shape of this narrative. Think of it as kind of a place from which to deviate as we're working. So we've already filled out a fair amount of this. We have figured out where our characters enter this domain of dread through a portal that opens up on the Blood Moon. We have talked about what kind of personal motivations would draw them through. We have figured out where they land in a shanty town that we're calling Darkport, that sits on the edge of an inland sea. We have figured out this inland sea is a big part of this domain of dread, that it was once the basin of a thriving metropolis that's now fallen into ruin and flooded. We figured out that there is a dread lord of this domain, that it's an elemental evil that we're calling Ovander. And we're still figuring out exactly how Ovander fits into the overall campaign, and what sort of interactions he would take to influence the characters. We have figured out the very first adventure that the characters go on, where they are kidnapped and briefly enslaved and must escape their captors, and in doing so, learn about the existence of a long lost artifact that gives the wielder some sort of power over this domain. And in the discovery of this, they figure out that this artifact must be their best bet for how to escape ultimately. And so now we're working on a part of the campaign that is very proactive. The characters have got a lot of agency to go out and explore the world and search for clues to locate this artifact. And for this, we're using a node structure style, where effectively we are littering clues throughout various nodes, or what I prefer to call investigative scenes. So they're interactions, or their little mini adventures, or full blown adventures, or what have you, where the characters can engage and can potentially find a series of clues in here, each one leading to a different other node or other investigative scene with more clues, and so on and so forth, allowing them to kind of follow these breadcrumbs all the way to the ultimate solution, the discovery of this artifact. So we have started filling that out. This particular style gives characters a lot of agency. Like I said, they can choose any kind of route they want, but also gives us a little bit of structure to work with, which is really nice. So as we can write some of these adventures ahead of time, and we've already done some of that. We have written a simple 5-room dungeon for one of these. We've written a heist style adventure for one of these. We've written what I'd call a complex social encounter that's less about adventure structure and more about social dynamics and role playing interplay. We have built out a simple encounter that's just talking to an NPC and getting some basic information. Nothing fancy about that. And from that, we have developed this NPC into a quest giver of their own for a little side quest, and we are working on that now. So the original uh, character that we built was one Elias Bracken, a former monster hunter who failed and who's failed to slay a particular monster and has become obsessed with them. And so while the player characters are under no obligation to go and track down this monster and slay it, there is the possibility for them to take this little side quest on and do it. So we are going to be building that out today, or continuing to build that out today. So before we begin, let me remind everybody that this is an interactive stream. So please feel free to jump in with your own questions, comments, uh, concerns, ideas, thoughts, opinions, or anything else you want to talk about while we are working this out. So it looks like we got a couple chats already. Oh, all hellos. Hello, everybody. Hello to our regulars and anybody out there who's new. It's good to have you here. And let's go ahead and get into our monster hunt. So we're we're balancing this for 4 third level PCs, because it's likely that this is gonna show up earlier in the, um, or early in the context of the character's explorations of this world, right? So we don't want to make it for brand new characters. We want to make it for, but we do want to keep it for tier one. Excuse me, tier one level characters. And so we're doing third level for this. But effectively, the players agree to hunt this monster that we haven't named yet. So we're using TK monster as the placeholder for that. But there are complications, obviously. Of course, there would be. It wouldn't be any fun if there weren't complications. Um, we have decided this monster is actually a series of clones, where a new clone activates when the current clone is slain, and that each new clone gains a new ability that makes them harder, more difficult to challenge than the last. And so we've brainstormed some of these potential immunities. We've also um, figured out that the monster's aspect, physical aspect should change with each clone, suggesting some of these newly acquired abilities. So there's a little bit of a visual difference, a little bit of hint to the player characters. But the core power of this creature is that all who don't possess a piece of the monster immediately forget its existence once it leaves their sight. Hence why Elias has become so obsessed with it, because he's the only one who remembers it, because he's the only one who has a piece of this creature in his possession, and therefore can remember it. And we started brainstorming what kind of monster we might want to create out of this. Maybe it's a river monster, is what we kind of came with an environment. Maybe it has a crustacean or insectoid base body. It's, we were talking about whether it's bipedal or whether it moves in a variety of legs, maybe 6 legs. Has maybe a lobster-like tail, that the 2 front legs are actually like scything kind of talons. It'd be a nocturnal creature, kind of sketching out our basic concept of it, because that is going to give us more information as we begin building out this beast. Now, we're using a pretty loose structure for this potential adventure. We're not relying on the 5-room dungeon or 5-scene dungeon in this case. We're simply just focusing on our Freitags pyramid here, right? Where we've got some basic exposition, where the characters kind of get the background of this, and then we're focusing on rising action, where there's a series of interactions with this monster or monster's clones that eventually lead to an ultimate confrontation where the players either win or succeed, and then the aftermath of this leading to a resolution. And so we're just following that up with 3 steps of contact with this creature, to before we get to the ultimate climax here, and working on what those encounters may be like. Okay, so we're going to begin, I think, continuing to brainstorm this out first, so we get a feel for what sorts of things the monster might have done and do, its own motivations, in terms of why it's attacking the village. Is it here to eat them? Is it trying to implant eggs in them? That kind of deal. And then we'll go back to start building out the monster stat block a little bit. So let's see here. Before we begin, we got one more cut. Excuse me, had a long night last night. Apologies. Before we get into this, we had a chat from Jonathan Frost as a spider eel, a Neogi. Yeah. I mean, there is nothing wrong with taking a stat block that you like and starting with that, and then just adding some of these features to it. Especially if you're working in a traditional fantasy setting where Neogi are more of a spelljammery kind of creature. That could be something that's unusual that we toss out at the characters and they haven't seen before. In fact, to that end, let's look up that Neogi stat block and see if it is something worth starting with, because we're can obviously modify it as needed. So let's check that out. So let's go to monsters. I got D&D Beyond up on the other screen here as usual. And let's see. Okay. All right. We've got the one from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. That's probably our best bet one. Um, let's see here. So we got Neogi, we got Neogi Master, Neogi Pirate from Spelljammer, Neogi Void Hunter. Let's just start with a basic Neogi and see what we get. It's a CR3 creature. Let's see here. Mental Fortitude, Spider Climb, multi attack with bite and claws. Let's see, Enslave. Let's see here. As bonus action, Enslave. It can once per short or long rest targets one creature. Must succeed a Wisdom saving throw or magically charmed for 1 day or until the energy dies. There's more than 1 mile from the target. The charmed target obeys Neogi's command. It can't take reactions. Neogi and the target can communicate telepathically with each other up to a distance of 1 mile. Whenever the charmed target takes damage, it can repeat the saving throw and the effect on itself. Yeah, that's actually not a depending on the motivations of this creature, that's something that we might want to start with. So that's worth keeping in mind. So as an idea, yeah, possibilities. Okay, so another comment we got here is a lobster centaur with 4 arms, each with different appendage, maybe talons, crustacean claw, tentacle, maybe some sort of spine spitter for ranged, head of an octopus, and humanoid body with scales. Yeah, we could go along with something like that. Something that again, we want to keep in mind is that we're going to be, that we are going to be adding to this creature as these clones repeat themselves, right? So, so having a base that we can add some things to, for example, maybe growing additional appendages is one of the things that could happen. In fact, new appendages. We put that on there as an option. Yeah, that could be something that we could do on that. Ben says multi-attack could have different options for effects. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Again, I wouldn't say don't do that. I would say, however, be careful with that kind of thing, because you can create a monster that is so complicated to run that it's just a real pain to do it. Which is not to say that you can't have some different effects for different attacks, because there are plenty of stat blocks that have the creature gets 2 of these attacks and 1 of this attack and that kind of thing, and that's fine, and it works and it runs pretty well. But I would say that when you start getting to the level of a beholder, where they've got 10 different options for every single attack, it can become a little burdensome to run, especially if there's any other monsters in this encounter. Not that there necessarily will be in this monster hunt here, but it's just something to keep in mind as you are building monsters. Okay, so to that end here, so we've talked a little bit about the kind of the arc here. We've got this idea that there's got to be a section where the characters have got to go track the beast, and they're going to find some unusual tracks. They are going to find these frothy egg clusters and carcasses of its victims, things like that. Then we have got First Contact. This will be the easiest of all the encounters, almost perhaps suspiciously easy, where the PCs slay the first clone and believe they have triumphed over the monster. And then in the Second Contact, they come upon either a town or an area of some kind of village, maybe suffering from a depleted population caused by this creature, or suffering from the effects of this creature overall and what it's been doing. The Third Contact, we haven't figured that out yet, what that's kind of going to involve. And then we have got the monster's lair, and we talked about there being sort of like eggs implanted in kidnapped townsfolk restrained by goo, which is a little alien, or a little aliens, but yeah, not overall a bad idea. There's nothing wrong with kind of borrowing from those those sorts of movies in that genre. So we still need to figure out what exactly happens in our Third Contact here. What sort of encounter do they have with this creature, and how should it be different from their other encounters? How do we make it unique? Because what we don't want to do is just have 3 encounters that are all the same with a creature that has slightly different powers each and every time. But we do want them to have those interactions. Um, so let's see. What could we do in the third encounter? Ooh, ooh. What if? What if? Uh, After the destruction of the second clone, what if the egg or what have you that that creates these clones or these clone jars or whatever we're going to end up going with? What if there's a quote unquote error and two of them activate, and so the third counter is a pair of these creatures working in tandem, each with these new abilities, making it a far more difficult encounter. Um, and suggesting that sort of suggesting that these could be clones and copies of each other, and there might be multiples of these entities out there. Um, yeah, what do you guys think of that? What do you think of that? I think it's a cool touch. I think it's in line with this, but I'm open to opinions. Um, Jonathan Ross says, now you're getting into Ron Perlman Hellboy first movie territory. It's been a long, long time since I've seen that movie. You'd have to refresh my memory on what we're doing on this. Is it the duality here? The the two of them working in tandem? Um, um, let's see here. Ben Elder says maybe the third encounter could be the wizard from the tower sends a message saying, bring the adventurers to the tower or more attacks will come. Um, yeah, hmm. So, since this is a side quest, I am reluctant to. I know it has. We've come up with a connection that the wizard in the wizard tower is the entity, is the person who created this monster, who created all these clones, right? And the um, and I think that's a great connection. It makes for a great clue. Connecting the Elias to the wizard, to the wizard's tower, and sending the characters in that direction. But we haven't come up with any kind of idea that the wizard is actually controlling this creature in any way. We haven't talked about that. Um, the so you know we so I would say, and again, because this is a side quest and it can happen pretty much anywhere during the time span that the characters are hunting this stuff down. So it could theoretically occur after they've dealt with the wizard, which would change, uh, which would really change that third encounter potentially if we leaned in on that. So I would go with something else personally, um, just because we don't want to assume that the narrative is going to be point by point as we've written it. Um, let's see here. Jonathan Frost says the creature they killed spawned too. Okay, yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking that idea if it works for us. Ben Older says maybe they need to deal with some scared townsfolk who try and arrest them to save themselves. When you say that, you mean like they effectively are taking, they try to take the adventurers and offer them up as tribute to this creature. Kind of kind of you know take them, not us, that kind of deal. That could be an interesting idea. Maybe that could be an interesting idea. Um, hmm. Interesting. Interesting. I kind of like that idea. That idea of an offering. Um, because they kind of ward off of these. Uh, you sort of ward off the attack on this town or this village in this second encounter, and so they kind of imagine that they're going to be the player characters kind of imagine that they're going to be not necessarily heroes, but that they've saved this little town here, or at least saved it from immediate sort of calamity. and for their efforts, they are betrayed by the townsfolk and offered up to this creature to hopefully slake its hunger for. Um, yeah, so hopefully slake its hunger for more of these, for more humanoids to kidnap and use for clones. Um, so yeah, we could go with something like that. I kind of like that idea. Let's see what else we've got in the chat here. We've got let's see. Jalen Ross says in the movies, it's implied that the only known way to permanently destroy Samael would, without causing him to be reborn, is to destroy all the cluster of eggs along with any available clones of the creature all at once. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so we kind of yeah, we're kind of borrowing some of that. We're kind of borrowing something from Alien. You know what? That's nothing wrong with that. Taking disparate ideas and kind of putting them together and building something new from that. Okay, I mean, fair enough. I'm good with that. Ben Elder says maybe there could be a half dismantled nautiloid below the tower with the machine that makes these clones, and the wizard is trying to fix it to try and get out from the domain of dread. And it has the idea earlier about the wizard saying to bring the adventurers to the tower. Said it was more to do with the wizard threatening the townsfolk, but yes, a desperate village saying "Take the strangers, not us" works as well. Yeah, okay. Jonathan Frost says, let's hear it. Ben Elder says, Jonathan Frost, it goes by many names. The Hound of Resurrection. Yeah, I don't like that one. Okay, cool. So, let's see here. Okay, so again, I don't want to insert I don't want to insert the wizard as a character in this. Specifically because again, it could happen at any time during during this arc, or the players might not engage with this adventure at all. And so it needs to, as a side quest, needs to largely kind of stand on its own. Otherwise, it runs the risk of becoming something that falls apart if the characters go down, take a left turn instead of a right turn, that kind of deal when they're running this. So I would not want to involve the wizard specifically in this. Although I do like the idea that the wizard's motivation is they're trying to get out of this domain themselves. That's a cool thing. I think we should add to that to kind of build out the wizard a little bit here. And I think that he should have laboratories making these sorts of creatures in it because we know he's been building stuff like this. We came up with that during our heist adventure in our Sahuagin stronghold. That being said, I wouldn't necessarily say that like there's a machine that's pumping these things out that they takes them to the wizard's lair or to the wizard's tower from here, because the wizard's tower is its own standalone adventure, and we had talked about it being not so much a take the wizard's tower by force kind of thing. We had talked previously about it being an encounter where the wizard is actually trying to trying to turn the player characters over to the Aboleth-led faction in our campaign, as a way to garner their favor. So, I think we want there to be a little less suspicion, or not necessarily less suspicion. I think we want the encounter with the wizard, the initial adventure for that to be something that is perhaps a little suspicious, a little eerie, but doesn't start off as we're gonna storm this tower and slay this wizard kind of thing. Because we want some variety in our campaign here. We don't want them all to be dungeon crawl kind of adventures here, although we can certainly have more than one of those in here. So, to give ourselves some flexibility on that, I'd like to kind of separate these two adventures. So, for the third contact, I do like the townsfolk betray the characters and offer them up as tribute to TK Monster. I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. So we get some cool kind of social dynamics going on here, um, and and I think it gives us a way to kind of add a new layer to this domain of dread, right? Um, because we could ask ourselves, what do the townsfolk think that they are suffering from? I mean, they know it's this monster attack, but why is this monster focused on them so much? Why does it steal people in the night? They certainly haven't gone for it. They don't remember a lot of this, right? They just know that people disappear, right? Because they don't see the monster. They just know that people are being kind of spirited away, right? They just they just vanish overnight. This has got to be a mysterious sort of thing. I wonder if they would ascribe sort of certainly something supernatural, but maybe something like a demon or uh, you know or some sort of divine interference here. Maybe they think they're being afflicted, um, afflicted, but maybe they've offended a god or something along those lines, or uh, you know. So, what is their point of view and on the disappearances of their town, not remembering that this monster exists, since it fades from memory whenever somebody doesn't have a piece of it. Um, to that end, why would they offer up the characters to this ambiguous entity that they don't really understand? Um, you know, unless they had some thought process of this is going to stop the disappearances and how and why. You know, um, to that end, it also explains why the wizard couldn't use these townsfolk, turn over the creature to the monsters or something along those lines, because they don't remember the monster. It fades from their memory as soon as it's gone, right? So this gives us something that we can build on. This gives us something to build from. So let's start with the townspeople point of view. Okay, so let's put ourselves in their mindset. Um, they are. They know that there are times when there is some sort of disturbance in the town, because we can see the aftermath of this monster. They don't necessarily forget that, right? Um, and that people disappear, but they don't know what it is. They can't. Anybody who's seen it certainly can't remember what it is. So there's hazy gaps in their memories. As for those who have encountered the thing, who they saw the commotion, all that kind of stuff. Maybe there's even a few dead bodies around as somebody's tried to save a loved one and the monster slayed them, that kind of thing. And so we've got all this aftermath, but no understanding of what caused it. So what would they, you know, people stuck in this domain. Maybe they're a little backwater. Maybe they are, they live in a world that has effectively an elemental god in it, that plays puppets with their lives potentially. They've got the existence of the Gray Lady. That's a deity that directly interacts with this world. Um, you know, I wonder if they would. I wonder if they would build some sort of pseudo religious belief out of this or a local superstition or something along those lines. Um, let's see here. Jonathan Frost's social anxiety is the only way it knows how to socialize. Yeah, it's got to kidnap friends. Absolutely, it's that's why it's here, right? You know, you're my friend now. Come with me. Um, and then Ben Elder says maybe they believe there is an opposite to the Gray Lady. Maybe something called the Mistling, a demon of the fog that takes those who have sinned or that attract its attention. Uh, could it be linked to the seasons? Maybe our players have arrived at the end of their winter and now the time of disappearance is here with more people working in the fields and shores. Um, I like the idea of there being an opposite of the Gray Lady, something that is that takes those who have sinned, who are not pious enough, who who have offended the gods in some capacity. I certainly like that. Um, the and I think that's where I would tend to lean on this. The bit about it being linked to the seasons, again, we don't know when our characters are going to interact with this side quest because it's not part of the main story. It's a tangential thing that they can kind of do whenever. Um, so I would say that we don't pin it to the seasons specifically because who knows when they're gonna do this. If they decide they're gonna go hunt the monster, you know, in the middle of summer when it's not the reaping season or whatever, um, then uh, maybe they can't find it then. I mean, like, it creates a situation where we either have to completely rewrite. We need to have an adventure that spans each and every season, right? Like we need to have one adventure for spring, one for summer, one for fall, one for winter, which you could do, but that's four versions of the same adventure, and the characters are only going to play one of them. Um, or you end up in a situation where if they don't interact with this side quest during a particular time of year, then they just can't do it. And that can be really frustrating for your players at the table. Seasonal monsters, to Jonathan Frost's point here, says seasonal monsters are cool. Makes me think of Locust and it. Um, the I don't disagree that seasonal monsters are very cool. The trick though is you need to have them in. You need to know that your adventure is going to take place during a defined time period, so that you can have those monsters in there without fear that they're just all that work that you've done is going to go to waste. Because yes, there will always be some work that you do that goes to waste running D&D games, but uh, the less of it that you can do for yourself, the less the the more you can do, the less you can do knowing that it has a high probability of being wasted, the better. Okay, so let's go ahead and capture some of these ideas. So, second contact. The town suffering from a depleted population caused by the creature. The townsfolk attribute this to a sort of divine punishment. Um, let's see here. Believing it is those who have sinned who are abducted. There we go. So to my mind, that creates some sort of person, some sort of NPC in this town who is pushing this narrative. Also, since the monster is not really, targeting people who have, sinned against the Gray Lady or in some capacity or this, then what counts as quote unquote a sin becomes kind of vague in this, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty in this town, um, and kind of making the people who push this narrative kind of scramble to define whatever it is that this person who got disappeared did. What sin did they commit? So I think that you kind of have this town that's kind of caught up in this cultish fervor. They're building a mythology and a religion around this thing that they just don't understand, and they can't explain in any other way. Um, so let's add some of that in here. The townsfolk attribute this to a sort of divine punishment, believing it is those who have sinned who are abducted. There is a let's see here, a new self-appointed preacher pushing this narrative. However, the monster attacks are truly random, meaning the preacher must use, let's see, we're going to say snaking logic to explain how the victims have sinned and to explain how the victims were sinned, how the victims have sinned. That's good enough. Let's see here. Mr. Max says, would the wizard be spreading this misinformation so the town goes to him and puts him in a position of power? Again, I really want to keep the wizard out of this. I really, really want to keep the wizard out of this because, like, so if we work the wizard into this, right? If we make him a key figure in this side quest, and the characters go and they deal with the wizard before they tackle this side quest, then we come back and we've got big holes in this adventure. Big holes in this adventure that we're going to have to scramble to fill in, or just scrap this adventure in its entirety. And again, we've lost all the work that we've done on this. And we've also come up with, we've put out a hook for a side quest out there, and then we haven't delivered on that to our players. So, since this is not part of the main story, and since this is not a side quest the characters get from the wizard himself, I really don't want to tie him in as a crucial figure in this. Tangential, absolutely. Associated with it, yeah, no problem. But as a specific, important NPC in this particular side quest, we're if we do that, we are just begging our players to do things in an order that we don't expect, and therefore completely underpin this adventure, making it something that we have to completely reconstruct. Mr. Rex says, okay, sorry, I got him out. Oh yeah, don't worry about it, man. Mr. Rex, it's not a criticism of you. It's natural to go, hey, we've got this wizard that is linked to this already. How do we stitch this to him further? And I just want to explain there's a reason I'm not doing that in this case, and it's not just to create something from whole cloth. It's because of how this will end up being played out the table in all likelihood. Okay. So we've got the second contact here. Now, how does the monster come into this? So I would say, okay. So, when in doubt, imagine the scenes that you're trying to create here. How does this play out in your imagination? And so I imagine the characters go, they learn about this monster from Elias Bracken. They go out, tracking it as one would, which would be the obvious step to take if you were a player character in this. So the so we know we got the kind of the tracking the beast they go looking for. They would find it in the first encounter. They have this battle with it. You know, it's easier than they expect, although probably not super easy, but easier than they would expect. And they slay the creature, and now they are, uh, now they're moving on. They think they have won, right? And now we're drawing them into second contact, and there is one little issue between the two of those here, and that is, how do we know that the characters are going to come to this town suffering from this, the attacks of this monster? We can't necessarily make them go there. We can, however, make it incredibly likely that they would go there. Um, and so we can do that with distances. We can also do that with it being kind of a quantum placement on our map here, where it just happens to be in the path of whatever direction the characters take on their way back from quote unquote slaying this monster. Um, we could this could be part of the quest that Elias gives them, that the monster lurks near this town, and they go through it. And the first time is they're kind of tracking, and they make that where they start tracking. We can do that. That's actually probably how I um, you know, would probably start this, laying the tracks that they come through this town initially, maybe. Um, and yeah, that's probably how I would do it, to kind of establish this town exists already. And it also gives them a jumping off point to follow the tracks from, because they're obviously not following tracks from Elias's house, right? They got to go somewhere to find these. And this is a good enough sort of navigational point, as opposed to somewhere in the forests beyond, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, that's probably where I would lean into this. But let's see what else we got here. Ben Alder says maybe they hear screams and smoke rising from the village in the direction they came from. Yeah, you can absolutely do it that way too. Um, they that they come in directly in the aftermath of this. Um, that certainly keeps this in a more linear sort of structure, like we have it written here. My idea involves bringing the town in earlier, and then we need to show some of this atmosphere here, and then having them come back through the town, later, because it's the obvious place to come back and continue on with their other quests, their other adventures, um, and then showing the differences that have occurred, as the town is kind of run down at the beginning, under this living in this this under this oppressive fear, and we've got this preacher who's kind of pushing this narrative, you know but it's just kind of a bleak place. And then they come back after dealing with this monster and immediately find the aftermath of one of these attacks. um, but having them just discover the town through circumstances such as the immediate aftermath of an attack, um, the is a possibility too. That can work absolutely. Um, and there's the arguments being made that your characters might go, yeah, we're going to ignore that, but in my experience, for the most part, they don't. You know, it's close at hand. It's intriguing. They want to know why. They go poke around and find that out. So that would definitely work, Ben. Absolutely. Mr. Mex says possibly meeting other adventurers that have had party members go missing. Attacks described sounds similar to the monster they took out. Yeah, that could work as well too. Um, you know that the sort of rumors or something that brings them to to this town, that guide them along the way. The only thing that we need to worry about. And I think with all of these potential ideas, um, uh, yeah. So with all of these potential ideas, something that we need to be careful about is the players dismissing them because they think they've taken care of the threat, without there being any sort of like, ooh, did we actually? Maybe we should check up on this. That's strange. Um, that Yeah, something that we want to make sure that we have that little bit of like something's not quite right from the beginning to encourage the players to follow up. Um, the the fun part of that, I find, when you're putting these little something that's not quite right into adventures, is that sometimes the players think that you've just made a mistake as a DM and they want to go point that out. And then they realize that it's all part of your master plan. And that's a really good feeling. Um, so I think we can kind of combine a lot of these into the same hook. We don't need to use these as disparate things. Let's see here, though. We got a couple more comments from Ben. It says maybe a fleeing NPC they met earlier, crazed with fear, just screaming it took them, or that they have sinned or are unworthy of the lady's light, that kind of thing. Yeah, we could go with something along those lines. Um, and then Mr. Mex, we can work yours in earlier into the adventure, I think, because we can lay out a few other clues in this. Kind of we can lay some track as we do this. So we'll say tracking the beast. We'll come over here. We're going to capture some of this. We're going to say um, in this process, the PCs meet another band, perhaps monster hunters, or travelers of some kind, who tell stories of people disappearing from, and we're going to say TK Town, because this place is going to need a name now that we are working it in here. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, and then we can add to our second contact screams and smoke. Draw the PC's attention toward TK Town. A town resident comes running towards them, screaming about the sinners having vanished. Scream about the sinners having vanished, or maybe about the wrath of a god / demon / devil, something along those lines. I would make this something distinct from the Grey Lady, because we have kind of an established religion in the Grey Lady, because we have that that priest, we have an acolyte of this other this other town, and I think that the twisty turny nature of the logic that the preacher in this particular town would have to use to justify the abduction and the vanishing of of quote unquote sinners would take a fair amount of warping of the Grey Lady's already established faith. Um, so I would maybe either pin it to that faith in that, like, kind of a Krampus to the Santa Claus or the Saint Nick kind of myth, or you know a the kind of the devil, in Christian, the Christian sort of faith structure, and or have it be its own thing, especially in a world where there are a multitude of deities. This could be a new one. This could be one that they have angered for having forgotten it, or something along those lines. Um, so that's just a personal preference. I don't know that. I mean, you could make the argument that people twist established religions all the time, and so we could twist and turn the Gray Ladies one as well. Um, and maybe that ends up being the best idea. Uh, I think at this point I would probably keep it a little bit loose, just to kind of see what we build out here. And also, if we build something new, we've added a new layer. If we use something that's established, then we've deepened the mythos around that. So there's pros and cons to both of those. Um, so I don't know that I'm ready to commit myself to one or the others on those personally, um, but it's worth keeping in mind. Let's see here. Or the Gray Lady. Also, if I spell Gray Lady right. Okay. So, there's still. How. Something that we might want to consider here then is a question to ask ourselves is, should the characters encounter the monster that yeah, should the characters encounter the monster in the second contact, or should they just encounter the aftermath of it? Um, I am tempted personally to make the living, I should say, uh, make this monster make an appearance towards the end of this encounter. So the characters are in this town that's just been hit. Somebody's just been abducted, uh, and maybe the creature comes back for some reason. Maybe its captive died along the way and it needs a new one. Something along those lines, maybe. Um, I would be tempted to do that. One, because it makes a cool little climax to this, little mini climax to this section of the adventure, but also because it gives us a chance to showcase how the creature has evolved and changed, and prove to the PCs that it is the same creature they thought they killed before. Um, sort of giving them some more information. So I would say something along the lines of TK Monster returns to collect a new victim. Perhaps last victim did not survive the journey. And finds the PCs there. Okay. Okay, so let's see. We got a few more comments in here before we start moving towards our wrap up here. So, the black smog. Ben Ellis says the black smog, a climbing fog made from the evil / impure thoughts of people, and it hungers for the flesh of the damned. Um, you know, hunger. Let's see here, a living fog. Yeah, okay, a living fog made from. Yeah, okay, that could be interesting. Yeah, yeah. And then Ben Older says again, the Mistling, a horned gray skinned devil with firelight dancing under its skin. It allures the unworthy into the fog by imitating the lights of home. Those are both really good ideas. And the question that I would then ask myself if we were working on that is uh, what sort of aftermath would we see? what would cause screams and smoke in the town um, that would draw attention from a creature that just lures its victims away. Nothing wrong with making it that. It just means that we would need to tweak that particular part of what we've come up with already. We just need to adjust that. Or we need to adjust the monster. And so this is a prime example of like, what do you have a better idea for, the actual kind of scene or the actual creature? And if we're writing this, whatever you've got the clear idea on, whatever seems more clear cut to you, go with that, and then modify everything else to meet that need. It'll be a lot easier than trying to pick something that you're like, well, I guess we can't do the thing I really want to do because it doesn't fit into this particular box. Um, so nothing wrong with going back and kind of tweaking this if we have a really cool idea for a particular monster. So definitely something to keep in mind. Let's see here. Mr. Mex says death by heart attack. Ben Older says the lamp smasher, a fallen priest of the Gray Lady that abuses the power she gave him to steal people's souls and all. Um, Ben Elder says, true, maybe the fire could be from people driven mad by fear and dropping lanterns or attacking their neighbors. It could be. Absolutely. It's already kind of caused a little bit of madness in Elias. So there certainly is an argument to be made that it has sort of these mind warping properties that could cause a little bit of mass hysteria when it occurs. Um, you know, to kind of counter my own argument here as well, it could also be that, when it shows up, people see a monster and they try to do something about it, and then they forget later on that it was the monster. And now there's, the aftermath of them trying to drive this thing back with pitchforks and torches or what have you. Things getting lit on fire as torches get thrown, and people get crushed in this fight. And then they see the aftermath of this, the and have to come up with a reason for it because they don't remember what happened. They have these hazy memories. But then again, hazy memories could lead to a little bit of a little bit of mental disturbance. It could lead to people doing hysterical and unusual things as they try to explain this. Also make them, I think, somewhat prone to wanting to accept a narrative that explains this, i.e., the preacher in this case. Let's see here. Ben Elder says deities and their opposition are one of my favorite things to come up with. Yeah, I like if that's something you like, lean into that with your adventures, because you're gonna have more fun writing them, and two, you're gonna spend more time putting detail into them. It's gonna make them richer. It's gonna make them better. And everybody's going to have a better time. So yeah, 100%. If you like doing that, toss that in there. So let's capture some of these ideas you've come up with here. The black smog. Let's see here. The mistling. The lamp smasher. Yeah, all potentially good. All good ideas here. All potential options for us to choose between. Cool. All right. Well, we've done a little bit of brainstorming on this, and I know we've done a lot more talking than we've done writing on this. But sometimes, the best thing that you can do is sit down for a minute and walk yourself through how you see this adventure unfolding, to find gaps and good ideas and places where you can add little cool things in there to explain why something works this way and not that way, and that kind of deal. And so, yeah, this is I think a great step in the process here. So wonderful, everybody. That brings us to about our time. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. We're going to have our regularly scheduled Wednesday session, just as we usually do, and that is already up on our YouTube channel here. So thank you again for jumping in with all these ideas. This has been really fun coming up with this. I'm really enjoying this. This idea of a monster hunt with these different layers to it is something that I've wanted to tackle for a while, just in my own personal DM building, and so it's fun to kind of get to play it out here with you guys and get your ideas and that kind of deal. If you enjoyed this stream, if you like this channel, if you enjoy this content, you want to see more of it, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that stuff helps the channel grow. That brings more people into our chat. That keeps the ideas flowing and fresh, and it helps us do more of this stuff. Also, fun little facts: Monday of next week, so a week from today, is going to be our 100th episode of Let's Write an Adventure. So I'm really looking forward to that with all of you. So thanks again, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Talk to you then. Bye now.